she cries when the door locks. 3-year-old Lila Green said it with a mouth full of strawberry cake, as casually as if she were announcing that it was raining. Across the dining room, crystal glasses stopped halfway to mouths. Mara Blackwood, the billionaire's new wife, turned toward the toddler sitting beside the household maid. Tasha reached for her daughter's hand. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Blackwood." She talks about everything she notices. Mara did not smile. "Who cries, Lila?" Lila pointed toward the ceiling. "Ellie." The room became quieter. 9-year-old Elise Blackwood was supposed to be asleep upstairs. Her father had told the guests she was too overwhelmed to attend the family foundation dinner. Grant Caldwell, Owen Blackwood's business partner and closest friend, had explained that Elise's anxiety had worsened since Owen remarried. Then Lila added 4 words that changed the evening. Bad click. Then dark. Grant set down his wine. Children invent stories when adults encourage them. Mara looked at Tasha. The maid's face had gone pale. Before anyone could say more, something struck the floor directly above them once, twice, then 3 times. Mamara was already moving when Grant stepped into her path. "The child is with her therapist. Then her therapist can open the door." She climbed the stairs. At the end of the east corridor stood a white door. Everyone had told Mara led to an old linen room. Tonight, a thin line of light showed beneath it. Mara tried the handle, locked it. From the other side came a small, broken sob. Owen Blackwood reached the landing behind her. "Elise?" The crying stopped instantly. Mara turned toward him. "Why does your daughter know how to become silent that fast?" 3 weeks earlier, Tasha Green had arrived for work carrying a toddler, 2 lunch and bags, and an apology. Lila's daycare had closed after a burst pipe flooded the building. Tasha had no family nearby, no paid leave left, and no one willing to watch a 3-year-old from 6 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon. She expected the estate manager to send her home. Instead, Mara Blackwood appeared in the kitchen wearing jeans, carrying a coffee mug, and said, "She can stay with me while you work upstairs." Tasha stared at her. The newspapers described Mara as a former museum conservator who had somehow persuaded billionaire Owen Blackwood to marry her 18 months after his wife's death. Gold digger was the polite version. Online strangers preferred worse. Tasha had worked at the estate for 7 years. She had watched reporters gather after Owen's first wife, Caroline, died from an aneurysm. She had watched 9-year-old Elise change from a loud, curious child into someone who whispered only when necessary. She had watched Grant Caldwell become more present as Owen grieved. Mara arrived later. To Tasha's surprise, she never tried to replace Caroline. She did not move Caroline's photographs. She did not redecorate Elise's room. She never demanded to be called Mom. She simply learned which tea Elise drank, which books she reread, and how long she needed silence before answering a question. Elise remained polite and distant. Grant called that rejection. Dr. Celia Voss, the child therapist hired through the Blackwood Family Trust, called it attachment resistance. Mara called it grief. Lila called Elise Ellie within 40 minutes of meeting her. The friendship began under the kitchen table. Elise had come downstairs searching for her watercolor set and found Lila building a house from sugar packets. Without speaking, Elise sat opposite her and added a roof. Lila moved one packet. Elise moved it back. Lila laughed. Elise almost did. That was the first time Tasha had seen Owen's daughter look like a child in months. For the next week, Lila followed Elise while Tasha worked. They colored, built blocks, and fed crumbs to birds from the conservatory windows. Then Tasha noticed something strange. Every afternoon at exactly 2:30, Elise disappeared. Dr. Voss arrived through the side entrance. Grant's assistant signed her in. Elise was taken to the East Wing for what staff called regulation sessions. When she returned, she was pale and exhausted. One afternoon, Lila ran over and hugged her knees. Elise flinched so hard that Tasha stopped folding towels. "Sweetheart, are you hurt?" Elise shook her head. Leela touched Elise's wrist. A red mark circled the skin. Elise pulled down her sleeve. "Bracelet," she whispered. Tasha did not see any bracelet. That evening she told Mara. Mara's expression changed immediately. "Did you tell Owen? Mr. Blackwood is in Zurich until Thursday." "Grant?" Tasha hesitated. "Dr. Voss reports to the trust office. Mr. Caldwell oversees it when Mr. Blackwood travels." Mara set down the tea. "Why does a business partner oversee a child's therapy?" Tasha had wondered the same thing. The Blackwood Family Trust was unusual. Caroline's father had built a chain of regional banks before selling them. When Caroline died, her 32% stake in Blackwood Hospitality passed into trust for Elise. Owen controlled the company day to day, but Elise's shares carried special voting rights. Till she turned 18, those rights were exercised by two trustees, Owen and Grant Caldwell. If Owen became unable to serve, Grant controlled the voting bloc temporarily until an independent guardian was appointed. Mara had no corporate role. That was one reason Grant claimed she should stay out of family financial matters. 2 days before, however, Mara had accidentally received an invoice intended for the trust office. It listed $180,000 in residential stabilization planning for Elise. There had been no discussion of residential treatment. Mara asked Owen about it by phone. He knew nothing. Grant explained it as contingency planning. Dr. Voss said it was standard. Mara did not believe either of them. Now there was a mark on Elise's wrist. "Tomorrow," Mara said. "I want to see one of these sessions." Tasha looked toward the hallway. "They won't allow it. This is my home, Mrs. Blackwood. That's not how they treat it when Mr. Caldwell is here." The sentence surprised them. Mara leaned forward. "Tell me what you mean." Tasha chose her words carefully. "Before you married Mr. Blackwood, Mr. Caldwell handled everything. Staff schedules, visitors, doctors, school meetings. He says he's protecting the family from people who want access to the money. And after I married Owen, he started telling people you were exactly that kind of person." Mara looked toward the conservatory, where Elise and Lila were drawing side by side. "Has Elise ever said she's afraid of me? No. Has she said she wants me gone? No. Oh. Then where is that story coming from?" Tasha did not answer. The next afternoon, Dr. Voss arrived at 2:27. Mara waited near the east staircase. Elise came down carrying a stuffed rabbit. Grant followed her. "Where are you going?" Mara asked. Grant smiled. "Therapy. I'd like to observe." Dr. Voss appeared behind him. "That would be clinically inappropriate. Why?" "Elise needs a space free from attachment pressure." Mara looked at Elise. The girl's fingers tightened around the rabbit. "Do you want me to come?" Grant answered for her. "Do not put her in the middle." Mara ignored him. "Elise?" The child looked at Dr. Voss, then at Grant. She whispered, "It's okay." Mara heard the words. She also saw the child shake her head once. Grant guided Elise toward the east corridor. Leela toddled after them, carrying a purple crayon. Tasha caught her before she reached the stairs. "Not today." Leela frowned. "Ellie sad. Ellie is having quiet time." Lila looked at Mara. "Door click." Mara crouched. "What door?" Lila pointed upstairs. Tasha lifted her daughter. "She heard a lock yesterday, that's all." But Mara remembered the red mark. She waited 12 minutes, then walked upstairs. Grant met her halfway down the corridor. "You were asked not to interfere." "I was informed, not asked." "Mara, you're new to this family." "I married Owen. I did not surrender my right to notice when a child is frightened." His expression cooled. "You are not Elise's mother." The words were precise enough to reveal they had been saved for use. Mara did not react. "No, I'm not. Which is why I have never asked her to pretend I am. Then respect the people who have been caring for her since Caroline died." A faint sound came from behind the white door at the corridor's end. Scratching, Mara stepped toward it. Grant blocked her. Sensory work can sound unusual. Move. No. For several seconds, they stood facing each other. Then the white door opened. Dr. Voss emerged. Elise followed with dry eyes and a blank expression. Mara looked inside before the therapist shut the door. The room contained no couch, toys, or therapy table. Only a chair, padded walls, and an electronic lock. What is that room? Dr. Voss closed the door. A reduced stimulation environment. You lock her inside? The door is secured during controlled exercises. Mara stared at her. She's 9 and traumatized. Elise flinched at the word. Mara saw it. Owen knows about this? Grant answered. Owen approved Dr. Voss's treatment plan. That evening, Mara called her husband. He was boarding a flight home. Did you approve locking Elise in a padded room? Silence. What? Mara closed her eyes. You didn't know. Owen said docs had described exposure-based emotional regulation. He believed sessions involved monitored exercises with doors, alarms, and other things Elise feared after Caroline's death. Why does she fear locks? Mara asked. Owen went quiet again. After Caroline died, Elise began panicking whenever a door clicked shut. Why? We don't know. She was asleep when Caroline collapsed. Are you sure? Mara, I'm asking because everyone keeps telling me what Elise feels while Elise barely speaks. Owen's flight boarded. He promised to review everything the next morning. He never got the chance. At 7:10, Grant called him from the estate and said Mara had disrupted Elise's treatment, frightened the child, and accused Dr. Voss of abuse. By 8, Owen received a clinical memo recommending immediate residential assessment. By 9, Grant had scheduled an emergency trust meeting for Friday. The memo described Elise as becoming increasingly distressed around Mara. It quoted the child saying, I don't feel safe when she's here. Mara read it twice. She never said that. Owen looked exhausted. He had arrived from Zurich without sleeping. Celia says she did during therapy. Inside the locked room? Please don't say it like that. How should I say it? Owen rubbed his forehead. I am trying to protect my daughter and my marriage at the same time. Then stop treating those things as enemies. He looked at her. Mara lowered her voice. Ask Elise yourself. Alone. No Grant. No therapist. No me. Owen agreed. Elise sat with him in the library for 20 minutes. When he emerged, his face was unreadable. What did she say? Mara asked. Nothing. She shut down the moment I mentioned therapy. Mara looked through the glass door. Elise sat curled in a chair, staring at her hands. Lila wandered in, carrying 2 crackers. No one stopped her. She climbed beside Elise and handed her one. Elise took it. Lila whispered something. Elise's shoulders began shaking. Mara opened the door. What happened? Lila pointed toward the brass lock on the library door. No click. Elise wiped her face. Owen stared at his daughter. Does the lock scare you? Elise froze. Grant entered before she answered. The trustees are waiting. The emergency meeting took place in Owen's study. Grant presented the residential plan. A private treatment center in Vermont would evaluate Elise for 90 days. During that time, an external guardian would control medical decisions, while Owen retained financial authority jointly with Grant. Mara noticed a footnote. If Owen rejected the clinical recommendation and Elise later suffered harm, the trust's protective clause allowed the second trustee to petition for temporary sole control. Grant could remove Owen from Elise's voting shares by arguing he had ignored medical advice. Mara looked up. This isn't about treatment, Grant sighed. Please don't start. If Owen sends her away, you control access through your approved center. If he refuses, you can challenge his trusteeship. Either way, you gain leverage over Elise's shares. Owen turned toward Grant. Is that true? It's standard trust protection. You drafted this plan. My office coordinated it. Mara asked, Who owns the Vermont Center? Grant hesitated. That was enough. Owen stood. Who owns it? Grant opened a folder. A healthcare investment group. Which group? Mara had already searched the corporate registry. Northbridge Clinical Partners, she said. 40% owned through Caldwell Capital Management. Owen stared at his friend. Grant's face hardened. My family's fund has a passive position. It has nothing to do with Elise. Your company bills her trust. Your therapist recommends the placement. And your trustee authority grows if Owen refuses. Dr. Voss stood. This is an outrageous distortion of clinical care. Mara looked at her. Then show us the session recordings. The therapist stopped. Owen frowned. There are recordings for safety documentation, Dr. Voss said. I want them. They are confidential treatment records. I am her father. Grant stepped in. Owen, don't turn grief into paranoia. The room changed. Owen looked at him slowly. You used to say that to Caroline. Grant said nothing. Mara noticed it. So did Tasha, standing outside the study with a tray. Later that night, Tasha told Mara what she remembered. Caroline had argued with Grant repeatedly during the final months of her life. Not about the company, about Elise's trust. Caroline believed consulting fees were being charged to the trust for services Elise never received. She planned to replace Grant as co-trustee. Then Caroline died suddenly from a brain aneurysm. Her death was medically natural, but the audit she had ordered vanished. Mrs. Blackwood kept papers in the East Nursery, Tasha said. Mara looked toward the locked white door. The room they turned into therapy space? Tasha nodded. After the funeral, Mr. Caldwell had everything removed. Did Elise see it? She was there the day he cleared the room. She screamed when he locked the door. After that, she stopped sleeping alone. The mystery was no longer why Elise feared locks. It was what the lock reminded her of. The next morning, Mara found Lila sitting outside the east corridor with her ear pressed to the wall. What are you doing? Ellie talks here. Mara crouched. Where? Leela tapped a decorative brass vent near the floor. Mara heard nothing. Then Lila whispered into it. Hi, Ellie. A faint metallic sound answered from the other side. The old nursery had once used a speaking tube connecting it to the service hall, so staff could hear a child at night. The tube had been painted over, but never removed. Tasha remembered it. Caroline hated intercom cameras, she said. She said machines made staff watch children instead of listening to them. Mara unscrewed the brass cover. Inside was a narrow acoustic pipe, and wedged behind it was a small pink memory card. Tasha stared. What is that? Mara carefully removed it. Something somebody wanted hidden where electronic searches wouldn't find it. The card contained audio files. Caroline's voice filled Mara's laptop. She had recorded notes for the trust audit. Payments to Northbridge. Duplicate therapy invoices. Consulting companies linked to Grant. Millions moving out through fees small enough to avoid board review. Then came the final file. Caroline sounded frightened. Grant knows I'm removing him. He came to the nursery tonight while Elise was here. He locked the door so she couldn't leave while we argued. She was terrified. I told him never to do it again. If Owen hears this, the files are with Miriam Cole at Harlow Accounting. Behind Caroline's voice, a 6-year-old Elise could be heard crying. A lock clicked. The child screamed. Mara stopped the recording. Tasha covered her mouth. Lila said, Ellie cry. Now they understood. Dr. Voss's treatment was not helping Elise process a random fear. It was recreating the exact sound connected to Grant. Whether the therapist knew why remained unclear. Mara called Owen. He did not answer. Grant had taken him to headquarters for an emergency board session. That evening, the Blackwood Foundation dinner began at the estate. Grant insisted it proceed, arguing that canceling would feed rumors about Owen's marriage and Elise's condition. Mara considered refusing to attend. Then she realized Grant expected her to disappear, so she stayed. Tasha stayed too, though her shift had ended. Leela sat beside her in the dining room eating strawberry cake. Owen arrived late from headquarters. He looked furious, but said nothing as investors entered. Grant had spent the afternoon telling directors Mara was interfering with Elise's care and attempting to influence the family trust. He proposed an independent guardianship review. The board would discuss it after dinner. Upstairs, Dr. Voss began an unscheduled session with Elise. No one told Mara. Lila noticed. She had seen the therapist lead Elise toward the east corridor. 20 minutes later, the toddler looked at Mara and said, "She cries when the door locks." Grant tried to dismiss her. Then came the pounding upstairs. Mara ran. The white door was locked. Owen arrived behind her. He called Elise's name. The crying stopped. Mara asked the question that shattered him. "Why does your daughter know how to become silent that fast?" Grant reached the landing. "This is a controlled session." Mara held out her hand. "Give me the key." "No," Owen turned. "Open the door." Dr. Voss spoke from inside. Mr. Blackwood, interrupting now, could reinforce avoidance. Elise began sobbing again. Owen's face changed. "Open the door." Grant said, "Think before you let Mara manipulate you in front of everyone." That was his mistake. Owen grabbed the emergency release key from the wall cabinet and unlocked the room himself. Elise was sitting on the floor behind the chair, knees against her chest. A soft restraint strap lay beside her wrist. Dr. Voss stood near a tablet. Owen looked at the strap. "Why is that here?" She attempted to strike the door. Elise shook her head violently. Mara knelt several feet away. "Elise, nobody is locking that door again." Grant stepped inside. The moment Elise saw him, she crawled backward. Lila had followed the adults upstairs. She pointed at Grant. "Bad click." Grant snapped. "Someone take that child downstairs." Elise looked at Lila, then at her father. Her lips moved. At first, nothing came out. Then she whispered, "He did it before." Owen went still. "Who?" Elise pointed at Grant. "When Mommy was here." Grant's expression did not change fast enough. Mara took out her phone. "We found Caroline's recordings." For the first time in 23 years, Owen Blackwood saw fear on his business partner's face. Grant recovered quickly. "Audio can be edited. Mara has every reason to manufacture something that makes me look dangerous. Then we won't rely on audio alone," Mara said. Tasha arrived carrying an old housekeeping tablet. Earlier that afternoon, after hearing Caroline's file, she remembered something else. The estate's door locks stored local event logs for 10 years because the insurance company required them after a burglary. Grant had administrative access. He had assumed the old nursery lock was replaced when the room was renovated. It was not. The log showed Grant's credential locking the nursery door 7 times during Caroline's final month. It showed the same credential accessing the new electronic lock. During 6 of Elise's recent therapy sessions, Owen looked at Dr. Voss. "Did you know he was controlling the lock?" Her face collapsed. "He told me the remote activation was part of the exposure protocol. He said Elise's trauma came from being trapped during an elevator malfunction." "That never happened," Owen said. Dr. Voss sat down. Grant moved toward the corridor. 2 estate security officers blocked him. "Move," he said. Owen's voice was quiet. "No." Grant turned on him. "You are choosing a woman you've known 2 years over the man who built your company beside you." Owen looked toward Elise. "I'm choosing my daughter over both of you." Mara felt the words and understood they were correct. This did not need to become a story about Owen proving he trusted his new wife. It needed to become a father finally listening to his child. Police and financial investigators arrived before midnight. The memory card led them to Harlow Accounting, where Miriam Cole had preserved Caroline's unfinished audit exactly as instructed. It documented 9 years of trust fraud. Grant had routed more than $14 million through care consultants, educational advisors, and investment firms linked secretly to his family office. When Caroline discovered the pattern, he tried to pressure her into silence. He had not caused her aneurysm. The investigation found no evidence that her death was anything but tragic and natural. But after she died, Grant exploited the confusion around her death to destroy the audit trail, isolate Elise, convince Owen that the child's fear came from generalized grief. When Mara entered the family and began asking questions, Grant's risk increased. The residential placement had been his solution. If Elise entered North Bridge, every behavioral episode could be documented under a company he influenced. If Owen challenged the treatment, Grant could use the trust clause against him. If Owen accepted it, Grant gained physical and informational control over the child whose shares he had been stealing from for years. Dr. Voss surrendered her license temporarily while regulators investigated her conduct. She had not participated in the theft, but she admitted she accepted Grant's version of Elise's history, used restrictive techniques without independent review, and ignored the child's distress because she believed resistance proved the treatment was necessary. Grant Caldwell was charged with fraud, embezzlement, evidence destruction, coercive control of trust assets, and conspiracy related to false billing. Several accountants and executives were charged later. The newspapers wanted Mara's version of the story. They expected the young new wife to describe how she exposed the older billionaire's corrupt partner and saved the family. Mara refused that headline. Lila noticed first. She told the only reporter she agreed to meet. Tasha believed her. Elise carried the truth longest. The rest of us were late. The reporter asked whether she felt vindicated after months of being called a gold digger. Mara looked toward the playroom where Elise and Lila were building another house from wooden blocks. Being right about Grant does not make every stranger wrong about me in a way I need to correct. My marriage is not a public trial. Owen heard the interview from the hallway. Later, he apologized, not for doubting the marriage, for something more difficult. I let people translate my daughter's silence for me because I was afraid of what I might hear if I asked her directly. Mara sat beside him on the conservatory steps. You were grieving, that explains it. It doesn't excuse it. He looked toward the house. I thought hiring experts meant I was doing everything possible. Experts still need accurate information, and fathers still need to listen. Mara nodded. Tasha did not return to being simply the maid. Owen offered her money first. She refused. I don't want a reward for noticing a child was scared. Then Mara asked what she did want. Tasha thought about it. A job where staff can report something about this family without the report going through the same person they're reporting. Owen created an independent household safeguarding office covering every residence, family foundation program, and private school funded by the Blackwood Trust. Tasha became its first staff liaison after completing training paid by the trust. She kept cleaning 2 mornings a week because, as she explained, I like finishing a room and knowing exactly what changed. Leela continued coming to the estate until her daycare reopened. Elise began speaking more slowly than adults hoped, and faster than anyone had a right to demand. Some days she talked for hours. Other days she communicated through drawings. Nobody described silence as failure anymore. The white room in the east corridor was dismantled. Elise chose what replaced it. She asked for a reading room with no electronic lock. The door remained capable of closing because privacy mattered, but the handle opened freely from both sides. Above it, Elise hung a sign written in purple paint, "Knock, then wait." 6 months later, the Blackwood Foundation held another dinner. This time there were fewer investors and more teachers, caregivers, foster advocates, and children from programs the foundation supported. The speeches were shorter. The doors remained open. Leela, now 4, sat beside Elise eating strawberry cake. Owen raised a glass, but did not make a grand announcement about the scandal. He spoke about systems that become dangerous when adults value expertise, reputation, or convenience more than what a child is trying to communicate. Then he stopped himself. Actually, he said, I think Elise should decide whether anything else needs to be said. Every face turned toward her. For a moment, the old fear crossed her expression. Mara began to intervene. Elise shook her head. She stood. When I was little, she said, I thought if I stayed quiet, Grant would stop asking me what I remembered. Then after Mommy died, everybody said I was quiet because I was sad. I was sad, so I thought maybe they were right and I was wrong. Owen lowered his eyes. Elise continued. Leela didn't ask why I was crying. She just noticed when. Leela licked frosting from her finger. Several guests laughed softly. Elise smiled. That was better. She sat down. No applause followed until Elise looked at Mara and nodded. Then the room rose. Later that night, after the guests left, Mara found Lila standing outside the new reading room. The door was closed. The toddler touched the handle and opened it herself. Inside, Elise slept beneath a blanket with a book beside her. Leela whispered, No bad click. Mara lifted her gently. No bad click. Tasha appeared at the end of the corridor. For a moment, the two women looked at the open door. The world would remember a maid's toddler warning a billionaire's new wife with 6 simple words. People would repeat the sentence because it sounded mysterious. She cries when the door locks. They would talk about the corrupt business partner, the stolen millions, and the little girl whose memory finally exposed him. Mara would remember something else. Adults had spent years asking what Elise's silence meant. They built diagnoses around it, financial plans around it, treatment around it, and arguments around it. A 3-year-old did something simpler. She noticed the pattern. The crying did not begin when Mara entered a room. It did not begin when Elise talked about her mother. It began when someone locked the door. Was me te pier. That difference had been visible the entire time. It only required someone small enough to look without first deciding what the answer should be.